I went to Six Flags Over Georgia this past April, and I had the chance to do Goliath, the park's B&M Hyper, 20 times over the 3 days I had there. It's considered one of the best B&M Hypers by a lot of people out there. So do I think it lives up to what other people say? Find out today in this review. You'll find Goliath in sort of the middle of the park. I went in expecting it to be the very front, but no, you'll have to make a left, go past Georgia Scorcher and make a few rights to get there, or go right past Twisted Cyclone and then go left. Both ways take about the same amount of time. The entrance is located in its own section of the park near the games. That's the only ride there, so you'll probably go there and leave that area unless you want to play a game. You'll get on the ride and notice there are 9 rows for Goliath. That's a lot, but it doesn't utilize that as good as it should. I'll touch on that in a bit. This ride has standard seating, not staggered. I do prefer this staggered for this model, like what Diamondback and Behemoth have, but whatever. Getting into the ride experience. Based on what I've heard, I went in expecting this to be my second favorite B&M Hyper coaster I've ridden. I thought it would be an elite hyper. However, I didn't think there was any way it would be above Diamondback. And when I saw it in person off-ride, it looked even better. The airtime looks even more powerful in person than on camera. This made me even more excited for it. The final airtime hills looked like they were giving ejector, and that's what I've always heard they've given. I also expected a lot from the Camelbacks. I heard mixed opinions about the first drop, and knew this ride was better in the back before I even rode it. Spoiler, it definitely is. But the front and middle rows were fun too, and better than I was expecting. Now let's go through all the elements this ride features. You first go down a 175-foot drop. This drop isn't very exciting. It's by far the worst drop on a B&M Hyper, and I wasn't too impressed by it at all. Considering it has 9 rows, the whip wasn't really that great for me. So then you go into a couple Camelbacks. They're both better in the front row, and you can really feel the speed in the front. I do like the first one better. They're solid floater, but not on the level of Diamondback at all. Then you go into the very intense downwards helix. This is for sure the most intense element on a B&M Hyper I've felt. I don't really care about intensity in most cases, but I really enjoyed it here. I usually do on B&M Hypers. You go into another Camelback where there is a noticeable trim. You don't really notice it in the front, but towards the back you can feel the ride slow down. After that is a solid turn, decent laterals, nothing too crazy. Then comes the best part of the ride, 3 airtime hills in a row. It's borderline ejector. I guess it is ejector depending on how you define it. These hills are really what makes Goliath best in the very back. They're pretty short hills, so when the front of the train is coming up on the next hill, the back row is still coming down, so the back row will get slammed into the restraint. This is some awesome airtime, and I couldn't help but smile while experiencing them. It's unlike anything else I've experienced on a B&M Hyper. It's not my favorite airtime on one of them, that would be Diamondback's Camelbacks, but this comes in at a strong number 2 airtime moments on a Hyper by B&M. And to finish off, the ride is a really solid airtime pop into the final brakes. You absolutely get slammed into the clamshell restraints, and this moment might be better than the drop, I'm not even joking. And speaking of the clamshell restraints, those are my favorite restraints of all time, so you know I love the restraints on Goliath. Let's get to the categories. Each category is worth more based on how important I think each element is for this specific model. I give this category a 9.25 out of 10 for Goliath, because the final hills are some awesome airtime moments that do give strong airtime. The Camelbacks are solid too. In the front they give floater, but nothing way too insane. Diamondback, for example, is the perfect 10, and this doesn't compare overall as far as airtime goes. So even though this has some awesome moments, it doesn't get a perfect 10. This drop gets a 4.5 out of 9 because it just didn't provide any crazy forces for me. It was just a fun drop to speed up to 70, nothing stand out at all. I can't put it any lower because it is a 175-foot drop with clamshell restraints. I think the fact that it's only at a 59-degree angle hurts it a little, but it's alright. This gets a 4 out of 4 for intensity for a B&M Hyper. That helix is really what makes this ride intense. And this isn't a perfect score compared to every coaster, but honestly, in a whole lot of cases, I'm not looking for it to be overly intense. This is the perfect amount of intense for me, especially for a B&M Hyper coaster. I really appreciate the amount of positive G's in the ride. Not too many, but not too little. I don't give this thing less than a perfect score for this category. This ride has some very solid pacing. In the front, you'll definitely find the pacing better on Goliath. This is because of the trim that hits fairly hard in the back row after the helix. It's still top tier for B&M Hypers because it has no mid-course brake run. I don't really have any complaints for this category other than that trim. That's really what keeps it from having a perfect score. Also, this model isn't designed to have world-class pacing, so it's not like it tears through the layout at the end, although it does move pretty fast. The scenery on this ride just isn't great. You've got a view of cars and a road. It's not really the best. You do get an awesome view of downtown Atlanta on the lift hill, but the ride scenery just isn't that great. It's not like extremely awful or anything, it's just not good. This category is for the butterflies you feel in your stomach. Some people don't like this feeling, but I personally love it. It might be the #1 thing I look for in a coaster. Usually, you'll find these on first drops, but there are some exceptions. B&M Hypers tend to give them on the first drop, but I didn't really feel too much on this one. The other elements didn't have too much either, but you could still feel it a little. It had more than your average coaster, but for a B&M Hyper, it was lacking in this category. Still alright though, so it gets a 7 out of 10. B&M Hypers are comfort kings. They're known for being nice, floater-filled, smooth rides with clamshell restraints, and that's pretty much Goliath. You can't beat a B&M Hyper in comfort. This is the last category. I was under the impression that this was one of the shortest B&M Hypers out there because I didn't really memorize the layout, but I think that should show that it isn't that short of a layout, the fact that I couldn't even remember the whole thing. I was definitely very satisfied with the ride time. I feel like I got my money's worth every single ride. There's longer rides, and that's why it's not perfect, but it is satisfying, so I'll give it a high score. So, we now have our total, and Goliath will get a 49 out of 61. That is 80% of 61. Adding these totals up, Goliath gets an 80% of the points possible, or an 8 out of 10. This is very solid for a B&M Hypercoaster. This, however, is not my personal score. I will give that score in a minute. This is a bonus category, a very important one that's usually overlooked by a lot of people. This is expectation factor. I'm going to show what score I predicted for everything and compare what it actually is to see if this ride met, fell below, or exceeded expectations. So I predicted for Goliath, airtime, 9.5 out of 10. Drop, 8.25 out of 9. Intensity, 4 out of 4. Pacing, 6.25 out of 7. Setting, 3 out of 5. Butterflies, 9.5 out of 10. Comfort, 8 out of 8. Duration, 5.5 out of 8. And total, 54.5 out of 61. This total comes out to 89% or 8.9 out of 10. So I expected to like this ride a little better statistically. This was still a fantastic ride, but I think the lack of that amazing drop is what hurt it. I feel like some of the Camelbacks could have been stronger, and I feel like this coaster is missing that drop to really make this ride stand out among the coasters I've ridden. It still makes the top 15 spot as of now, but the lack of a great drop really holds this ride back. The final airtime hills are really what make Goliath such a fun ride to do. It made me want to do it 20 times in a park with an RMC. That being said, I could keep riding whenever I wanted with my disability pass, but still, I had to use that up on this awesome ride. It's currently my second favorite B&M Hypercoaster, as I predicted it would be. I don't know if it'll stay in the top 5 for B&M Hypers in the world, but it could. I hope not, because it does have a lot to improve on, but it's still at the top half of B&M Hypers I've done. It's a great ride. For a personal score, I'll give Goliath a 9 out of 10. It's missing that great first drop that would give it an ultra elite spot in my rankings. However, it does have some strong airtime moments to end it off, and it is the most intense B&M Hyper I've done. So if you like that, I'm sure you'll love Goliath. It's a coaster that I recommend being on your bucket list to ride for sure. that'll do it for this review. Let me know how it was. I'm trying to update my reviews a little bit, and this was my first video with my new phone, so tell me how the audio was. This was also my first video of the new channel rebranding. I should be bringing you a vlog or off-ride footage with the new camera from Six Flags Darien Lake this weekend. If you have any more review suggestions, please let me know down in the comments. If you have any video suggestions in general, let me know. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you later.